It has been established that persons who have recently died have been returning to life and committing acts of murder.
In 1968, George A. Romero released Night of the Living Dead. Night of the Living Dead is the first of its genre, the quote-unquote zombie film, which, in this context, zombie means the dead coming from the grave and attacking people either to eat them or, you know, turn them into a zombie, I suppose. Romero started that. Before, there was a lot of other movies that had zombie in the title, like White Zombie or I Walked with the Zombie, that featured the actual origins of the term, which comes from voodoo. You know, they were mind slave voodooing zombies. I'm not sure really why or where we all started calling them zombies. I don't know if it probably came after Night of the Living Dead. There was films that were very much like Night of the Living Dead afterwards. There was Shockwaves, Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things. There was Cronenberg's Shivers and his movie Rabid, which were very similar to Romero films, but, you know, went in a different direction, of course, it being Cronenberg. Then Romero released Dawn of the Dead, the sequel to Night of the Living Dead, and at that point it just kind of seemed like there was no real issues with now making movies that were about the dead coming back to life and eating people. It was now a fair concept that many people could just make different ideas, you know, based upon. Films like The Beyond, Night of the Creeps, Night of the Comet, Dead and Buried, all, you know, zombie films. One in particular, though, was Return of the Living Dead.
So burn! So burn! Burn the flames! Higher, 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 and higher.
The interesting thing about Return of the Living Dead is it was actually based on a novel written by John Russo. John Russo was one of the original writers of Night of the Living Dead, who also retained the rights to any titles featuring Living Dead. Russo and producer Tom Fox planned to bring Return of the Living Dead to the screen in 3D, and it was supposed to be directed by Tobe Hooper. Dan O'Bannon, who was brought in to give the script a polish, and Hooper, who apparently was, you know, going to direct the film, backed out to do Life Force, a script that Dan O'Bannon also wrote, was given the director's seat. And he accepted on the condition that he would rewrite the film radically so it wasn't like Romero's films. Russo retains a story and writer credit in the film for developing the project, but the final film bears little to no resemblance to the original novel, apparently. O'Bannon's script also was radically different from Romero's, that it was marketed more comically. It was like a slapstick kind of humor. It was morbid kind of jokes. Just a lot more eccentric, you know, overall. It had nudity in it. It was just a comical kind of tone compared to anything Romero did, and I guess that, you know, Russo and Dan O'Bannon, you know, they were only attached to the first film. I don't think there was many other ideas about making other Return of the Living Dead films, but here we are making this video. Return of the Living Dead went on to have 4 sequels. Return of the Living Dead Part 2, released in 1988. Return of the Living Dead 3, released in 1993. Return of the Living Dead Necropolis, released in 2005. And Return of the Living Dead Rave to the Grave, released also in 2005. Now, to be honest, I love the first film. A huge fan of it. And the thing is, I would probably like to make a video on it, but I don't think it's underrated. I think it's got a huge following. I mean, if it has 4 sequels, it's not very, underrated. But I still love it. I love the original movie. And I never really had any interest in seeing the sequels. I've always heard they're garbage and god-awful, maybe except part 2. And we're at the point where I will be giving my review of the sequel to Return of the Living Dead. Return of the Living Dead Part 2. Yeah. While transporting drums of the dangerous trioxin gas, one of them falls from an army truck into a river. In the morning, a young boy, Jesse Wilson, is bullied into hiding under a bridge nearby the cemetery, where Jesse finds the drum. The 2 bullies find Jesse, they see the barrel, then the bullies lock Jesse in a mausoleum, and they decide to open the barrel, releasing the trioxin and breathing the toxic gas. Meanwhile, the grave robber Ed hires Joey to help him pillage the cemetery in a van with Joey's girlfriend Brenda. Ed and Joey break into the mausoleum, leading Jesse to escape and run home. His sister Lucy isn't happy with him and tells him to do his homework. Oh, and she don't believe that the dead are back from the grave. It's very, very, very clear that this is a sequel. It's one of those movies where undoubtedly they made the thing because they wanted to make another. Not to really elaborate on a story more or go into different detail. It's just pretty much, hey, here's the same movie again, but some things are different. Like this time, there's a child involved, but it does have the guys from the first 2 films, Freddy and Ed, I believe, are playing, they're playing pretty much the same characters again, and they slowly start turning into zombies again, with the rigor mortis setting in, and they get stiff and they feel sick. They may turn, it's very much a sequel. It's very, 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 very much a sequel. By no means is this as good as the first one, and this one, yes, it is fun, and I recommend watching it. I recommend, if you've seen the first one, watch this one too. But it's just kind of like, beating a dead horse a little bit. A lot of the same jokes are in it. It's just like the same formula, just a couple things are a little different here and there. James Karen and Thom Mathews play Ed and Joey, who are almost the spitting image of their last characters from Return of the Living Dead, Frank and Freddy. And then, the rest of the cast is, they're just sort of there. They play their parts okay. The young Jesse Wilson, played by Michael Kenworthy, he does a good job, but a little forced, I think, even for a kid. So, I would say the stronger part of the cast is, again, James Karen and Thom Mathews playing pretty much the same roles they played in the last one. But then there is this part where they break into somebody's garage and this person is smoking a pipe, and it's very similar to Ernie, played by Don Kalfka in the original movie. Who is portrayed by Philip Burns in this Doc Mandel character, who's this older guy, I would say, than Ernie was, but he's, smoking a pipe and he's doing things that are very similar to the character in the last one. It's almost as if they couldn't get, Don Kalfka to reprise his role, so they decided to basically just rip off the character. Just another thing about this film that makes it pretty much the same movie, and really, the ideas are so similar, and it feels a little cheapened because of that, unfortunately.